Hello again, boys and girls. Kneeling on the floor in my basement as always, doing some math with you guys. One of the harder things we're going to work on in fourth grade is how to subtract mixed numbers, which is obviously our essential question. And then something that's going to be different is what happens when I borrow. Borrowing with fractions is going to be a different thing that I'm going to be explaining to you. So we'll start with kind of a more basic version of it. If I had 5 minus 3.5, and I always like to think of those real world examples. The goal for the week is to run 5 miles. You've already done 3.5. Say it's Wednesday or Thursday. How much do you still have left? And when I go to subtract, one thing I want you to get in a good habit of is, again, you do the fraction piece minus the fraction piece first. And again, I know what you're thinking. There is no fraction piece in one of them. So we need to make one. Okay? So again, if I have 5 and I split it up here, all 5 pieces, and I cut them all in half. One thing that you'll notice is that kind of this last piece over here, there's something that's different. Well, it's the same for now. Okay? What would just this piece be? This piece shows 2 halves. Then I can still have my 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to rename this to 4 and 2 halves. I'm not changing how much there is. I still need to do 5 whole miles. I'm just calling it 4 and 2 halves. Right? And I'm just going to pick whatever the bottom number already is. That's the number I'm going to use because that's my denominator that's going to make the problem really easy. So that's going to, the 5 is going to change to 4 and 2 halves. Then I'm going to subtract 3 and 1 half. Okay? Now that I have those 2 pieces, now I can give you one of them. I'll show you again. Now that I have those 2 halves, now I can take one away. Here I had nothing to take a half away from. Right? If I have nothing, I can't give you one. I don't have one. Right? Now here I'm just renaming this to 4 and 2 halves. Now I can take my half away. That is just fraction piece minus fraction piece. 2 halves minus 1 half is 1 half. And then big number minus big number, a whole number minus whole number makes 1.5. There is a way that you can technically do this for these. It's a little harder. Like I could just take 3 away, take 1, 2, 3 away, and then chop this one in half and get that same answer. But that does get trickier when the numbers get bigger. Okay? So the preferred method for me is to change this first or rename it to 4 and 2 halves. Right? Sometimes you're not always going to have to do that, though. There will be some times where the numbers work out. So this is why you always start with that fractional piece first and you check. Again, if I have 4 pieces and I owe you 3, I can do that. Right? I can take away 1, 2, and 3. And so that case, I could do it. 4 minus 3 just becomes 1. 5 and 5 on the bottom, so I keep that in fifths. And then 6 minus 2 is 4. So that was time I didn't have to borrow. And that'll be probably most of your assignment for this week will be like those ones. But I also wanted to show you there'll be a couple of these other examples on there too. And like I said, it's one of the harder things that we do in fourth grade. So don't feel bad if this is kind of confusing or you're having a little trouble understanding it. Like I said, usually we're able to spend a lot more time going over it and practicing it. But for now, it's just trying to get you familiar with it before you move on to fifth grade. Another example, again, 4 and 1/3. Again, I have that 1 piece left over and I owe you 2. Right? I don't have 2 to give you. So what I have to do, I always think of it like with markers, like I have to open a whole new pack. In this instance, each pack has 3 things in it. So these 2 pieces together are going to become important. Right? Here's already my 1/3. This one over here is 3/3. It's going to be even a little different than the first one. So what happens, just like up here, the 5 turned to a 4. My 4, when I borrow, becomes 3. Okay? A kind of quick trick that I do sometimes, I just add these 2 things together, the top and the bottom, and that becomes usually my new top number. I already had 1, and then I added 3 more. I kind of did 3/3 plus 1/3, which makes 4/3. Now I can take 2 away. Okay? And again, just like that example before, right? When I only had 1, I couldn't give you 2. What I borrowed was I borrowed 3. That's what's hard about this, because you guys are just used to making that something like 11, but it's not. I only borrowed 3. Okay? And I already had 1, so now I have 4. Now I can take 2 away. So at that point, it's just 4 minus 2 is 2. Again, that's my fractional piece minus my fractional piece. 3 was already on the bottom, so it stays there. And then 3 minus 1 is 2. Again, I can show you that with the pictures, right? I'm going to get rid of 1 whole piece. Then I'm going to get rid of 2 more of these smaller pieces. So it's going to be this little piece over here, and then this little piece over here. I know they're now separated because I had to erase something in the middle. But now you can see how I still have 2 whole pieces plus 2 little pieces. It's like 2 remainder 2. Right? The first 2, the answer goes right here, and then that remainder goes up there. Right? And then this one will be even harder. So we'll see how you do. Oh, before that, I wanted to show you an example of how we do this, like with regular, when we're just doing our regular borrowing. Like if I have 63 and I try to take 25 away. Right? Again, I'll use that same example. My kids tell you I use this a million times in class. If I have 3 markers, I can't give you 5 of them. I don't have 5. 3 minus 5 is not 2. That's not how it works. Again, I can show you that physically. You want 5 markers from me? I only have 3. What I have to do is I have to go and borrow some. And again, you've been learning this really since 2nd grade. Just like what I did with the bigger number, right? That 6 becomes a 5. And my 3 becomes 13. So again, you picture that where I have these 3 markers already, and you would have to imagine a whole nother pack of 10 coming in. Again, just like with our fractions, we're not changing how much we have. We're just calling it something different to make the problem easier. It's now 50 plus 13. Okay? That's what happened. The 60 became really a 5 or a 50, and the 3 became 13. I'm only doing that just so I can do the subtraction. You can do 3 minus 5 is negative 2. Again, I don't want to get into that. Right, so 13 minus 5 is 8. And then 5 minus 2 is 3. So again, it's just that part where we have to set up. That's the hard part. Once we're set up, the actual math isn't that tricky. Okay, and then on to our next one. I can't seem to get it in the right. Again, so it's important. We have a problem like 6 and 3/8 minus 2 and 5/8. Pretty similar to the 63 minus 25 we just did. I purposely picked those same numbers, 6 with 3, 2 with 5. It's going to be one big difference here. When we borrow, our 3 is not going to be 13. And I'll show you why in a minute. Okay? You notice there are these 3 little extra ones left over, but it's not 3/10, it's 3 out of 8. Right? So again, when I'm thinking through that, again, first I just try to see if I can do my subtraction. I can't right now because it's supposed to be 3 minus 5. Fractional piece minus fractional piece. 3/5 minus 5, or 3/8 minus 5/8 is not 2/8. Okay? If I take 5/8 away, I'm not going to end up at 2/8 over here. So again, here's what always happens, those steps. First step is the big number is going to go down by 1. Instead of 6, I'm going to call that 5. Here's my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, I'm not changing how much there is. I'm just going to call it something different. I'm going to kind of combine these two together. This one was already 8/8, and this one was already 3/8. So again, that quick hint or shortcut that I use, again, the good thing about as you get better with math, you learn kind of those rules or those protocols or those steps, and then the actual math becomes easier. Okay? It's not some kind of thing that I'm cheating or something like that. I'm using what I already know about numbers to help this work. You just kind of add 8 plus 3 together, because that's the number I'm going to pick. It's already the bottom number. I'm going to borrow 8. That's why it's not going to be 13. I already had 3, so it's just 8 plus 3. You can count up here, and that makes 11. Once I call this, rename this 5 and 11/8, the subtraction part is easy. Okay, I'm going to take away 2 and 5/8. Once I have it set up, the subtraction isn't hard. The setup is. It's just 11 minus 5 is 6. 5 minus 2 is 3. Again, I'm going to completely take these two whole packs of 8 away. Okay. Again, you have to wait for that just in case you have to borrow. In this case, we did. Then it's just 11 minus 5. So I'm going to get rid of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and again, you can see what happened there. What I had left was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 11 minus 5 makes 6. It still takes 8 pieces to make one whole. So that remains my bottom number. Okay, so again, there'll probably only be like 1 or 2 questions like this in your work from me this week, but I do want to sort of expose you to that before you get to 5th grade. It's an important concept to understand. Okay? Otherwise, you guys are doing an awesome, awesome job.